What's happening, everybody? Welcome to another episode here, the Side Guys Football Forum. I'm one of your co-hosts on the side, joined as always by my good friend, my good buddy, the guys, Mr. Tad the Side. And Tad, before we get into the episode, happy belated birthday! You have hit a big 30, man. So this is a big, milestone in life, getting to 30. So I mean, how did you spend your birthday?
Well, first I spent it watching the TCU Frogs beat the Stanford Cardinal. Sloppy game, but I'll take it. I'll take it.
Yes, it was a very sloppy game. I was watching that game.
I will say I'm actually happy about that game, though, because for my birthday, I decided I'm going to do a shot for every time TCU scores a touchdown. Not scores, but scores a touchdown. We only scored about 4 times.
I was like, so based on that game, it was not so bad.
That really bailed me out. So thank you, Sonny Dykes.
All right, Ted, in honor of you turning 30, I thought I should give you this I Feel Old segment. So these are current players for college football that have a famous NFL father. So you ready to hear this list?
All right. Well, real quick, before you start, it was funny watching Colorado. Who they play? Colorado, North Dakota State. Because I thought that was Joe Horn's son for like half the game.
Yeah.
And then I looked out, I was like, oh, no, that's Jimmy Horn Jr. I was like, that's not his son.
No. So yeah, ready to hear this list and feel old?
Sure.
Especially with you turning 30.
CMP 25 has ruined a lot of this.
So Adam Vinatieri has a son. Shit. AJ Vinatieri is a kicker with Louisville Cardinals.
Oh, wow.
Brian Urlacher has a son who is a safety. Kennedy Urlacher is a safety with the Notre Dame Fighting Irish.
That is an awesome name.
This one I think you should know. Muhsin Muhammad has a son.
That I didn't know.
Moose Muhammad, the third wide receiver, Texas A&M. Willis McGahee has a son named Willis McGahee the fourth, is a linebacker with Nebraska.
Wow.
Kurt Warner.
What?
Former MVP and Super Bowl winner. Kurt Warner has a son who is a quarterback, EJ Warner, with the Rice Owls. So in your home state of Texas.
There you go. Yep. In Houston.
This one you may know as well. Chad Pennington has a son, Cole Pennington, also playing for his alma mater, the Marshall Thundering Herd.
That's one of the ones the video games ruined, because I did not know that until I took the head coach job at Marshall. I was like, there's no way that's the same Pennington.
Yeah. Jason Taylor, former Defensive Player of the Year and Hall of Famer. Mason Taylor is a tight end with the LSU Tigers.
Wow.
Antonio Gates, his son is a wide receiver, Antonio Gates Jr. with the Michigan State Spartans.
Go Sparty.
Obviously, we know about this one. Deion Sanders has 2 sons, both playing for Colorado. Shadeur Sanders at quarterback and Shiloh Sanders at safety.
Dirty.
Donald Driver. Has a son, wide receiver Christian Driver with the Minnesota Golden Gophers.
Wow.
Emmitt Smith. This one, I guess, is not that feel old.
I vaguely remember this one.
Yeah, Emmitt Smith has a son, also a running back, EJ Smith with the Texas A&M Aggies. Rodney Harrison, former safety with the New England Patriots and the Chargers as well. He has a defensive back son, Christian Harrison with the Tennessee Volunteers. Your boy, Edgerrin James.
This one I did know. Yeah, this one I did know.
Eden James is a running back with Howard, so he's playing with the HBCU college. Matt Hasselbeck.
What?
He has a son who is a quarterback with LAFB owns UCLA Bruins. Henry Hasselbeck is a quarterback with the Bruins. And then the last one here, Josh McCown.
I was wondering when this one was coming up. Yep. The Josh McCown at UTEP.
Quarterback. No, it's UTSA. So
Roadrunners
out of San Antonio there. Owen McCown is a quarterback with the UTSA Roadrunners there. So how many of those caught you off guard? I know you gave me a sort of a what with some of them there, but yeah, I saw this list and I was like, man, yeah, I feel a little old for sure.
Fuck, we're old.
Yeah, a little bit.
I hate it.
A little bit.
I hate this. How dare you?
Yeah, sorry. It's honor of your 30th birthday. I kind of had to do it.
Well, and you missed a very, key one, by the way. I know it's not a son, but technically nephew, in the same category, Arch Manning.
That is true. He did actually see some playing time in that blowout against.
Did he? I did not watch a second of that game.
I forgot who they played, but yeah,
I forgot
Texas
who they
absolutely
played as
blew
well.
out
It was
whoever
like
they were
52 to
playing.
3, and I was
Yeah.
yeah, forget
No,
it.
they shut them out. They shut them out. There was no score in that one for the opposing team. But yeah, I mean,
Colorado State.
Colorado State, that's what it was. That's what it was. But yeah, guys, that's a little bit of brief into what's currently going on based on the past landscape of NFL stars there. But yeah, if you're looking for, some action with the current NFL stars, we have the NFL season kicking off next week, and get into the action with our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. So, I mean, you can bet on the NFL, you can bet on college football, which you just talked about right now. The NBA season will be tipping off in October. We got the final regular season month of the MLB season. We got the final couple of weeks of the WNBA season. So, I mean, you got the tennis, the US Open. You can bet on that as well. I mean, there's a ton of things you can be betting on right now. So get into the action with our good friends at Underdog Fantasy, and they want you to get into the action so bad, they shared a promo code with you that we want to share with you now. That promo code is DESAI, DESAI. You can double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500, courtesy of our good friends at Underdog Fantasy. So, I mean, hypothetically, if you were to put in that max amount, $500, using our code DESAI, DESAI, you could double up on that offer on your first deposit only the initial deposit, and you can get that match dollar for dollar. You can bet with up to $1,000 on their betting platform. So it's a perfect thing to sort of get into as we get close to the NFL season. If you're a college football fan, that is already kicked off. So, I mean, you can start betting on that as well. Tons of fun. You can use the website, very easy to use. The apps are very easy to use, both on Apple and Android devices. I mean, all you have to do is make anywhere between 2 and 8 different prop bet picks across whatever sports you're comfortable with. More picks you make, more potential money you could win. So once again, that promo code is DESAI, DESAI. Double up on your initial deposit of $10 or more, up to $500, courtesy of our good friends of Underdog Fantasy there. So, talk about some college football stuff here, Tad. I mean, that is what the purpose of today's episode. We already had some games kicked off this weekend. So we're going to give a quick preview of the 2025 NFL draft. So, I mean, yeah, we're obviously, the fantasy football guys in season, but once the season is over, we definitely transition into the NFL draft during the months of January up until I'd probably say about May. That's where we do all of our draft coverage. And so, yeah, we want to give a quick, sort of semi 2024 season preview, but more of a 2025 NFL draft preview. So, I mean, Tad, we have to kick it off with the most important questions first. And so let's get to this question here. Which special teams player will come off the board first? Because, I mean, I know you're a big special teams guy. As soon as we get to the NFL draft, you always single in on a guy that you're just like, this is the guy that, can really blow it up once it comes to the NFL season. So who's that guy for you so far?
Well, a couple things first. One, this is why you're the host, because I saw what you did there with kick it off. That was good. That was clever. Yeah. Well done. 2, I've yet to find my Tory Taylor for this year.
It is still early. It is still early.
Very early. I promise I will find my Tory Taylor. 3, quick shout out to a longtime listener and fan of the show, Jay. That was the moment I was like, oh my God, people actually listen and watch our show. We did not do a live stream for the third day of the draft, and the Bears, I believe, traded up, if I'm not mistaken. But I
can't remember if they traded up, but they did select.
At the very least, the first round of the third day, in the fourth round, they took Tory Taylor. We got a message from Jay, be like, I wanted you guys to be live for this so bad. And I was like, because it was a running joke for months at that point.
Oh, yeah.
And yeah, no, that was the moment too. I was like, damn it, we should go live, because that was a discussion we had of like, do we do it? But ultimately we did not. But all right. So in terms of first special teams player off the board, obviously, we said this is still very early on in the season. It's hard to judge. And you know what? I'm going off recency bias. I'm sitting on my couch on Thursday night. I don't have school the next day. I'm turning 30 the next day. I'm having a great time. And it's a close game between UNC and Minnesota. Which, by the way, I don't know if you saw that. Minnesota missed the game-winning field goal, but the stadium guy still set off the fireworks.
I saw that on X or Twitter or whatever you want to call it, right? So I did see that, yes.
Yeah, RIP that guy's job. But, so Minnesota's kicker obviously did not impress me. It was the other kicker that impressed me. UNC's kicker, Stephen Burnett. Oh, my God. Noah Burnett. See, it's still so recently I'm messing it up. He was just one of those guys, you just see it on the eyeball test and you're like, oh, he's got it. Like the it factor, he's got it. And he kicked 3 consecutive field goals in the second half to give UNC the 19-17 win. But also after, that game, I decided to look up his stats. This dude's only missed 1 field goal. in the last 2 years. And his career long is 53, but before that, his career long was 51. So he's got the leg, he's got the clutch factor, because if you were watching that UNC Minnesota game, those were some high tension, kicks, and especially given the emotions and everything. For those of you who don't know, UNC's quarterback, Max Johnson, apparently just obliterated his leg. He's out for the season, unfortunately. So there was a very emotional team. He was able to put all those things aside and nail 3 field goals, including the go-ahead eventual game-winning field goal. Noah Burnett, I think he will be the first kicker, first punt, or he will be the first kicker off the board. He will go before any punter. There we go.
I think kickers usually tend to go before punters. I think Torrey Taylor was sort of exception last year.
Well,
so
and he's like the best college football punter of all time. So,
but yeah, I expect a kicker to go as well. But I went in a different direction. So I went with the kicker out of Alabama, Graham Nicholson. So he won the Lou Groza Award last year, but this was when he was playing for Miami of Ohio. So the Redhawks there. Transferred to Alabama this season. So I think he's going to get a lot more attention on him playing for a bigger program, playing for a bigger school. There could be situations where, adjusting to Kalen DeBoer's offense, they could end up settling for more field goals as opposed to scoring touchdowns. So I could see him kicking some good high pressure field goals, especially if they get potentially to the, new formatted college football playoffs, which most likely I think they will.
Yeah.
He'll probably make some kicks in that big time setting as well. He made 27 to 28 field goals last season. And Tad, I don't know if you saw this, but you may want to look this up. There's a viral video going when they're doing a report at Miami, Ohio. They're talking with the coach, and he is just going on a rant about how Alabama poached their kicker from them.
Is that I heard?
Hilarious.
I vaguely heard about that. I wasn't sure what it was about.
Pretty hilarious. I had to look at that video, but yeah, I like Graham Nicholson right now as my front runner for sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not gonna lie, he was in the running for my pick, but I just want to go a little off the beaten path. But
That's fair.
it's very possible, especially with just the amount of publicity he's gonna get. It's very possible. It is very, very possible. Is he a senior?
He is going to be a senior this year, correct?
So then he gets a possible Senior Bowl bump as well there.
That is true. That is true for sure. All right, Ted, let's actually get to a little bit more pressing question to probably all of our listeners out there and viewers. If you're watching us on YouTube, we appreciate you. Which position group do you think is the strongest heading into 2025's draft?
I still have yet to do a lot of scouting work here, but obviously the big, I think that applies for both of us. But just right off the bat, I can tell this is going to be a loaded edge rusher class. You look at James Pearce, Michael Williams. I think that's how you say it. It's spelled Mykel. So probably, is it Mikel or Michael? I'm going to go with Michael for now. But Michael Williams, the edge rusher out of Georgia. Nick Scourton, the edge rusher out of Texas A&M. Abdul Carter at Penn State. I mean, you look at what most of these guys did just this past weekend. Oh, my God. I mean, A&M's defense up until the very end looked like absolute dominant over Notre Dame. Penn State shut West Virginia down. Obviously, Georgia made Clemson look like a D2 team. Which I love, by the way. But I think it's almost the opposite of, this past year's draft where we didn't have an edge rusher go until 15 when a certain, future Hall of Famer went to the Indianapolis Colts. I don't think that'll happen again this next year. I think we could see as many as 5 edge rushers go in the top 15. I think this is, and we may even, and this is a question for later, but we may see an edge rusher go first overall. I think there's a very real possibility of that. But, other than edge rusher, I think corner. This is a very, very strong corner class led for now by Will Johnson out of Michigan. But I think it's weird because, again, we went on a historic run last year where a defensive player was not taken in the top 15 until pick number 15. I would have a very hard time imagining that repeating this next year.
That's fair. Yeah, I think we should see a stronger defensive class compared to this past year. And yeah, I really don't think we're going to have to wait until middle of the first round to get our first defensive player off the board. But I'm going to go in a different direction from you. So last year, we were talking about running backs being one of the weaker classes last year. Now, obviously, like we discussed, we're still very early in our draft research. I'm pretty sure I'm next to nothing right now. We'll probably get a lot closer once we get towards the end of 2024, beginning of 2025, where we'll really ramp it up here. But this could be one of the strongest this year, but it's clearly one of my favorites, and that is the running back class. So, it's like we're talking about last year where it's like, I remember I had a bold prediction where it's like we wouldn't have a running back drafted in the first 2 rounds of last year, and then, finally we had the Carolina Panthers take Jonathan Brooks there in the middle of that second round. But yeah, I think this year we could easily see a running back being drafted in the first round, possibly even two, depending on how things shake out. But definitely we'll see a lot more drafted in the second and third rounds. But just overall, there's going to be a higher priority for running backs because this draft class is pretty stacked. You got Ollie Gordon the second out of Oklahoma State.
He's so good.
Quinshawn Judkins.
Let me tell you from experience, Ollie Gordon's fucking legit. That guy's gashed my TCU Horned Frogs for years now.
Exactly. You got Quinshawn Judkins and Travion Henderson from Ohio State. You got, you talk about Max Johnson with UNC going down for the year. I bet you this guy's going to see a lot of action now. That's Omarion Hampton, the running back with North Carolina. He's going to see a lot of work. You got Donovan Edwards in Michigan. Jaden Ott out of Cal. So, I mean, we could see a prospect there from Cal.
I remember speaking
there.
Sorry to interrupt, but I remember speaking of CFB 25 as I was going through the rosters. I know nothing about Cal. I'm based in Texas. Yeah. I don't pay attention to the Pac-12, now ACC for some reason.
Yeah.
But I remember going through the rosters. I was like, Cal has a guy in the 90s? And I was like, Cal has a guy that's 95?
Jaden Ott, yeah, so he could surprise some people. You got Nick Singleton out of Penn State. You got Raheem Sanders at Arkansas. Then you got Taj Brooks out of Texas Tech. So, I mean, these are just some of the guys I listed. There's a few more that could get added to this list. And, Tad, the last time that we had double-digit running backs taken in the first three rounds of the NFL draft.
Hold on. 2016.
Older than that.
Damn it. Really?
2008. And here's a pop quiz for you, Tad. How many running backs do you think you could name from that draft class in the first three rounds alone?
Okay, I'm just going to shoot off a name. If I'm wrong, I don't know this class. So 08, was that Darren McFadden's year?
That is Darren McFadden's year. So he was the first running back off the board, number 4 overall to the Raiders. Oakland Raiders at the time.
No Sean Marino.
Not in this draft class.
Oh, no, I'm mixing up the two classes, aren't I?
Yeah.
So Beanie Wells isn't in there either, is he?
He's not in this
one. No, I'm so screwed.
Yeah.
Oh, God. Darren McFadden, somebody went to the Cowboys, right?
Yes, he did. In the first round.
God, this is good.
22 overall.
I'm going to be really mad when you tell me, aren't I?
Who was it? Arkansas.
Was it McFadden? Was it?
No.
Oh, my good God.
The backup for Derek McFadden.
No, it wasn't DeMarco Murray. He went to Oklahoma.
Yes.
Felix Jones. Felix Jones.
Yes. He was also in that draft class. You got any more names for you?
Peyton Hillis. Was he that same year?
Peyton Hillis was not drafted.
God damn it.
But yeah, he wasn't part of this draft class.
Good God, that Arkansas team, though. My Lord. Oh, God. I don't know. Is a Michigan running back in there? I feel like there's a Michigan running back. Mike Hart?
Nope.
Oh, my good God. Is it?
Well, okay. I'll give you this. Mike Hart was drafted by your Colts, but that was all the way to the 6th round.
Damn it.
Yeah.
So Donald Brown was years later. God damn it,
Donald Brown was years later. Yeah.
Yeah, I got nothing.
All right, I'll save you the embarrassment a little bit more here. So yeah, you got Derek McFadden at number 4 overall.
I thought I did pretty well for a pop quiz.
You did pretty good, especially confusing different draft classes there. But you got probably one of my favorite nicknames, The Daily Show. Jonathan Stewart was drafted by the Carolina Panthers at 13 overall.
That's right.
Felix Joseph, the Cowboys at 22 overall. Rashard Mendenhall drafted by the Steelers at 23 overall. CJ2K, Chris Johnson at East Carolina was drafted by the Tennessee Titans, 24 overall. Matt Forte out of Tulane, drafted by the Chicago Bears in the second round.
It's coming back.
Ray Rice drafted in the second round by the Baltimore Ravens. Kevin Smith out of UCF, drafted by the Detroit Lions in the third round. Jacob Hester, drafted by the then San Diego Chargers in the third round. Jabal Charles, electric running back out of Texas, was drafted by the Chiefs in the third round. And the one-year wonder for the Houston Texans, Steve Slayton out of West Virginia, was drafted in the third round.
Well. My God. God damn it, we're old.
Yeah, so I could see that very much being replicated. Like, Tad, if I were to give you this prop here, over under 9.5 running backs in the first 3 rounds this coming year, what do you think you'd say?
9.5 is high.
Yeah. So it's pretty much like, will it go to double digits, or do you think it'll go under?
I would take the slight under.
Under.
If you change that to 7.5, then I would take the over there. I think about 7 or 8 are going to be taking the first 3 rounds.
That's fair. I think as of right now, it's very early in the process, but I'm going to go with that over. I think we'll get double digits again, first time since 2008, but we'll see how this all plays out for sure. All right, Chad, let's actually get to, the question most teams are definitely, interested about. They definitely have to address this in their, with their franchise, whether it's in the offseason, whether it's through the draft, whatever it is. If you don't have a good one, you're kind of screwed. And so, Tad, looking at this year's draft class, especially at the quarterback position, it's a little shaky. And so it's like, how many quarterbacks do you think will get drafted in the first round this year?
I think there's an interesting phenomenon happening with the NFL draft right now where, people love to mock, six quarter. I mean, this was happening the last 2 years, really, where, they were mocking six quarterbacks in the, first round. I'm not saying like we're innocent of that. I think you and I both had, that scenario happen once or twice in our mock drafts.
I don't think I've ever mocked six quarterbacks ever.
I've at least had five in mine.
Yeah, I was just about to say, I was like, especially last year where we had some question marks with your Bo Nix, your JJ McCarthy's, your Michael Penix Jr. It was like, we're sort of fringe on those. So I remember we were mocking like at least 4 or 5. But yeah, I think we were both caught off guard when we had 6 go last year in the first round.
Yeah, I think, but despite that, I think there's a kind of a market correction where NFL teams aren't really overdrafting quarterback. Like, I wouldn't say anybody was really overdrafted based off reputation last year. Like, I think the most overdrafted quarterback was probably, you could argue Penix, but that's the outlier. Yeah. I think the most overdrafted quarterback was Nix. Now, I remember at the time, Al Rowe, who was doing the live stream with us and did a great job, by the way, he was like, well, that's a bad pick. And you and I both were like, yeah, that's too high for him, but what else were they going to do? Because it was like, Nix wasn't going to be there if they tried to trade back up. So point being is, I think the NFL has actually done a good job of figuring out the right value for the most part of a quarterback. Sure, you'll have the Falcons do the Falcons thing and, kind of throw off the value chart a bit. But all this to say, like you said as well, this quarterback class is a giant question mark, and we'll get into this in a bit. But I was having this debate with friends of like, oh, this guy is the best quarterback on the on the board, and my friends were like, no, he's not. And it's going to be a very interesting debate. So ultimately, 3 for sure will go in the first round. I can't see us going more than 4. I'd be shocked if it's more than 4.
Yeah, I think just, I did a little bit of some math over the past 5 years and looking to see how many quarterbacks are drafted in the first round. So we did have exception, obviously, with 6 last year. But over the past 5 years, we're averaging 4 quarterbacks per first round over the past 5 years alone. So I'm leaning with that prediction of probably 4 as well. I mean, like I said, we're very early in the process as far as which quarterbacks are going to be like in that conversation for being a first round quarterback. But yeah, it also wouldn't surprise me if we see 5, because like I said, we thought it was going to be 4 or 5 last year. It ended up being 6. And so, yeah, I could very much see a situation very similar to this year where it's like, yeah, I think there could be a situation where it's like we're projecting for possibly maybe even 3 only. But yeah, we could see possibly 5 as well. But yeah, if you're asking me right now, I'd probably stick with 4.
So we got the 3 guarantees. So Carson Beck's going to go in the first round. Shadeur Sanders is going to go in the first round. I don't think he should, but Quinn Ewers is probably going to go in the first round.
Yeah, I agree with that one as well.
I think you're going to give
both that he shouldn't and both that he'll go in the first
round. Ewers, I hate him. That's going to be like the hill I'm going to die on come January. But I think you're going to, and here's the interesting thing that I'm going to keep an eye on is that 4th wild card is going to be interesting because you got Aller, if I'm pronouncing that right, the kid out of Penn State. He looked,
I think it's Aller, if I remember
Aller, correct. Yeah, he looked really, really good yesterday against West Virginia. But, you look at his stats from last year, he only completed 59% of his passes, so you have a lot of question marks surrounding him. A kid I was really high on until last night, Wegman. The kid in A&M, I was like, oh, he is really, really good. And then he just sucked against Notre Dame. And I was like, oh, dear God. Who else? You got
Cam Ward of the University of Miami.
Cam Ward's going to be interesting because he's, 25, 26 at this point.
Yeah.
You have a lot of interesting wild cards that I don't know, like, who that random player is going to be, but there's going to be a random quarterback that, kind of jumps out at you.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel out of Oregon. And this is a guy that I brought up at the end of last year's draft process where I was like, this guy, depending on the season that he has with the new head coach in Alabama, Jalen Milroe, I think, could be in that conversation for being a first-round quarterback as well. If he blows it up with the new system here, taking a sort of, leap from what Michael Penix Jr. did under Kalen DeBoer there, I could possibly see that happening here with Alabama. So we're talking about quarterbacks here, Tad. So will a quarterback be drafted first overall? Like, do you think that's going to be that's going to happen this year?
Will a quarterback be drafted overall? Absolutely. Should a quarterback be drafted first overall? No. There's no quarterback, I believe, that like you're the guy. You're gonna change my franchise. You're gonna be like this Andrew Luck level player of like, okay, You're it. You're the blue chip prospect that's going to change everyone's for.
Yeah,
He's not here. He's not here in this year's draft.
I don't think so, yeah.
But again, with I'm kind of going off what I said previously, where the marketplace has corrected itself. That's largely true, except for the top 5, where people will overpay.
I can even argue the top 10 based on what we saw with Michael Penix Jr. last year. So
that's a very good point.
Oh,
yeah, exactly. The Michael Penix thing has proved it. If you believe in a quarterback, you will overspend for him or overdraft him. So yeah, will a quarterback go number 1 overall? Yes, and I think via trade. I don't think the team holding on to the number 1 overall pick, unless it's the Giants, will hold on to that pick.
That's fair. So I'm leaning more towards that. So I do agree with you. I don't think a quarterback will go number 1 overall unless we see a trade, but I don't think that we're going to see a trade because, Tad, I was looking it up. So based on over-under totals from Bovada, these are the teams with the lowest odds as far as projected win totals. You got the Carolina Panthers, the New England Patriots, and the Denver Broncos all at 4.5. That's the over-under set for them. Then the next set is the Washington Commanders, the Tennessee Titans, the Minnesota Vikings, the Las Vegas Raiders, the Arizona Cardinals, and the New York Giants all tied at 5.5. So if you look at that list there, I'd probably say there's only 2 teams there that would, definitely take a quarterback number 1 overall if they were selected with that full option there. So that would probably be the New York Giants and the Las Vegas Raiders because everybody else has already drafted a quarterback, or they drafted a quarterback last year or in a previous couple of years where it's like they have their franchise guy that's like it's too quick to already move on from them. So with that sort of said there, I could see very much that, we already listed out that this could be a very strong edge rush class. I could see James Pearce out of Tennessee being drafted number 1 overall. It's just overall, this quarterback class is just very questionable because, if you go back into past history here, in 2022, we had Trayvon Walker go to the Jacksonville Jaguars. In that draft class, Tad, we only had 1 first-round quarterback. Do you remember who that was?
Oh, God, that was our first draft we live streamed. It was why do I remember that? Tyler Lindenbaum was the Ravens' first-round pick, but I can't remember the first. God, who was it? There's Trayvon Walker, Aiden Hutchinson.
I'll give you a hint. He is no longer with the team that drafted him.
Oh, my good God.
And it's only been 2022. So,
was it Zach Wilson?
It was not Zach Wilson. It was actually Kenny Pickett out of
Damn it!
Drafted by the Steelers.
There we go. That's why I blocked my memory.
That draft class also featured, it's very similar to this year, where it's just it had Desmond Ridder in it, Malik Willis, Matt Corral, Bailey Zappi, Sam Howell, and Brock Purdy.
Are any of those players on their original teams?
Brock Purdy.
I hate you.
And then, Tad, if you go a little bit further back, if you go to 2017, we had Mitchell Trubisky drafted number 2 overall after number 1 overall was...
Is that Lawrence?
No. That was Myles Garrett.
What is happening in my memory today? My memory is terrible today.
So we had Mitchell Trubisky, number 2 overall in 2017. You had Patrick Mahomes, who traded up. The Kansas City Chiefs traded up to number 10 overall to select him. Yep. You had Deshaun Watson at number 12 overall. But then outside of that, Tad, you had Deshaun Kaiser. Ugh.
Ooh.
You had Davis Webb. Also,
out of Cal, yeah, damn.
CJ Beathard showed some flashes with the Niners, but ever since then, he's just been a bit of a journeyman. You got the Passernaut, Josh Dobbs, and I can't believe this guy got drafted, but Nathan Peterman was drafted in that draft class. So I could actually see this year's draft class, Tad, where it's outside some of those top names, the rest of the draft class is just very much just I don't know how I feel about it. So it's I really don't think in this situation in this year that we'll get a quarterback at number 1 overall. I'm leaning more towards, like I said, a defensive end. Maybe you'll get a team that's just so enamored with Justin Hunter out of Colorado that maybe they'll take him number 1 overall. But I really don't think it's going to be a quarterback this year.
Get ready for that sound because that's going to happen. I'll tell you right now. Because I would 100% agree with you. But it's funny. While you were naming all those teams with the odds, I was like, ooh, if the Panthers get the first overall pick, that's going to be a pain in the ass. I don't want to have the is Bryce Young done debate for 5 months. I don't want to do that. So Panthers, please be good this year. But no, I think, and again, I'm totally convinced, and maybe it's just recency bias of just how hard watching Hard Knocks, just how hard the Giants were trying to find a solution for Daniel Jones throughout that series.
Yeah.
It's a total lame duck situation, both with the GM and with Daniel Jones. The team hates him. The ownership hates him. they're going to move on after this year. So I think it's going to be the Giants with the first overall pick. Not saying they're going to be so bad they landed. I'm saying they're like one way or another, they're going to get that pick.
Okay, that's fair. That's fair. So, all right, Tad. So obviously we're talking about, the question about whether a quarterback should be taken number 1 overall or shouldn't he. But regardless of that, which quarterback? Because we're talking about this quarterback class being not that strong, but just, out of the names out there, we talked about Shadeur Sanders, talked about Carson Beck, talked about Quinn Ewers, we talked about Jalen Milroe, talked about a few of these guys. Who do you think should be the first one off the board?
Carson Beck, no question.
Okay.
No question. Okay. And this is the debate I was referring to earlier in the episode. Was, to me, Carson Beck is the safest option in this year's draft with quarterback. His ceiling is limited. I don't see him being a superstar, but I do see him being a I'm trying to think, and not in terms of comp of play, but kind of like a Kirk Cousins in terms of, what you got. Like, you're not going to be thrilled with Kirk Cousins, but you got a solid quarterback and you could be worse off. Like, that's Carson Beck to me. The only real negative on his game that I can tell so far is his mobility is next to nothing. But I mean, the dude has accuracy. If you're watching the Clemson game, he had a back shoulder fade throw that was like one of the most beautiful throws I've seen in quite a while. It was an absolute money throw. And, the debate I was getting in with my friends was they're not convinced of Beck yet because they're like, well, the team around him is so good, which is fair. But also, we can't just discount his ability of, the team around him is so good because he is also really good. So that's the thing is like, it's not like this is, Baltimore Ravens with, what was his name? Not Brad Johnson. He was with the Buccaneers. Trent Dilfer. There we go.
Trent Dilfer, yes.
Trent Dilfer. Or Brad Johnson's another example.
Oh, yeah, Brad Johnson with the Buccaneers. Exactly. Going to give that example too.
It's not one of those things of like, okay, we're dragging this quarterback along with us. It's like, no, truly, I think Carson Beck helps elevate this team. So, yes, this is ceiling lower than, let's say, a Shadeur Sanders. Yes, but is he also a safer bet than Shadeur Sanders? Absolutely. So Carson Beck, if a team decides to go quarterback number 1 overall, should be the pick.
Yeah, I 100% agree with this one because, I think the big thing with Shadeur Sanders is that volatility factor where it's like I was watching some tape of him. And once again, we're very early in the process, so I got to dive into a lot more tape once we get to the end of the season. But I was watching his game from when they played ranked UCLA from last year. And, okay, yes, the offensive line was terrible for him. But the biggest thing that I had with the problem with him, which I'm hoping to see more of this year, and that maybe, like I said, I just need to watch more tape, is that he has the mobility, but yet for some reason he wanted to stay behind the line of scrimmage and make a pass. It's just like he wanted to rack up those numbers, and that led him into A, bad passes, and then B, because of that offensive line, he was in situations where he was getting sacked then more often than he needed to. Your boy with the Indianapolis Colts now, Latu got to him many times. We're just like, his pressuring him awesome so many times. It's just like, I'm so surprised that just like he wasn't willing to just, tuck it and run like a Jaden Daniels or like, a Jalen Milroe last year. It's like, I didn't see that with just Shadeur Sanders. So it's like, I'm hoping we see that more this year. And then with Carson Beck, exactly like I said, it's like, he didn't have the mobility. So most likely he's going to be dissecting defenses from the pocket. But just, there were so many times where just like, this is an NFL throw.
Yeah.
This is an NFL throw. This is an NFL throw. And I was like, this is the guy that's like, if I'm looking for a quarterback to take my offense to another level, that's like, this is a guy that I want. But once again, we're very early in the process. And then, unfortunately with Quinn Ewers, I watched some of his tape. I watched it with the Red River rivalry from last year. I watched him against Oklahoma, right?
And so you saw A.D. Mitchell underthrows, huh?
I saw a lot of those underthrows, and just overall, there was nothing about him that excited me. That was just like, okay, I don't see the arm strength. I don't see like impressive accuracy. I didn't see like good pocket awareness. I did see a little bit of mobility. So, I mean, he did have that, but just overall, there was nothing about him. Like I said, once again, I only watched one game tape of him, but just like overall in that one game tape, I was just like, people are projecting him to be a first rounder. It's like, this just sort of, like I said, just makes that position more premium than it needs to be because people are thinking this guy's going to be a first rounder.
If that guy played for any other school but Texas, he would not be in this conversation.
I agree with that. So I think the conversation is between Beck and I think Sanders for sure. Like, I mean, if you're looking for that more modern quarterback, that's what Shadeur Sanders is. Absolute cannon for an arm. I think just that mobility aspect, like if you could train that up, I think he could bring that element to your offense. But if you're looking for like an actual legit quarterback prospect, I think that right now is Carson Beck. So I would take Carson Beck first.
And I think another thing that you need to factor in here is that, Georgia runs a very pro style offense. Like
sure,
that being able to adapt to the NFL, I think it's going to be a much smoother transition
I
for
agree,
Carson Beck. You watch Colorado's offense, and not saying it's a bad offense because they just put up 30 against North Dakota State. Congrats.
But that's the thing. It's like it's North Dakota State, so it's like I need to see him to get some more ranked points.
And that's the thing. It's a very rudimentary offense. It's like it's something like it's just your very typical option RPO type of college offense that you see.
Well, and very few passes went more than 5 yards, and so it was like all
and
the
ones
work
that did were wide open.
Yeah, and then that was the thing. When any deep pass was thrown, it was like the receiver had 10 yards between the nearest defender. So it's just like, what am I seeing with Shadeur Sanders? That's the thing that sort of questions me. So like,
also, it's like a zip on the ball because you're right. He has a can. I know you have a cannon arm, but he seems to float a lot of passes.
It's true.
So it's gonna be interesting. So yeah, it's all about like, do you want the flashy, like, oh my god, like home run? But are you going for Barry Bonds or are you going for Derek Jeter? Is essentially what's happening here.
Exactly. That's a very good analogy there for sure. So all right, Tad, I think that sort of closes our quarterback conversation here. Let's transition to the other side of the ball. I mean, you brought this up before, but we could see a strong edge rusher class. We could see a strong defensive backs, specifically the cornerback class could be very good this year. So who do you think will be the first defensive player drafted off the board?
Dude, I would love to see underdog, Bovada, whatever the odds are going to be, because this is a tough question. There are legitimate arguments for maybe 5 or 6 players to be the answer to this question. So right now, I'll just go with the guy I like the most, just based off pure talent. It's James Pearce Jr., the edge rusher out of Tennessee. That dude is a monster. I really mean this. Like, he might be the best pass rushing prospect I've seen since Jadeveon Clowney. Like, he is legitimately that good. You look at what he did last year. He had 10 sacks, 14 tackles for losses, just him alone. He's not even a senior either. Like, so he's going to keep developing. I really hope he doesn't make the mistake of, and I have a friend who coaches for Tennessee, so I'm sorry for saying this. Don't buy in the bullshit, dude. Just go to the draft. Don't do the whole thing of, I'm going back for my senior. Don't do it. Because I think his production this year is going to be off the walls. But it could, like I said, I already named a lot of them. Abdul Carter, the Penn State edge rusher, I think is a real dark horse candidate. Michael Williams out of Georgia. Right now, I've seen some people have him ranked above Pearce. Obviously, Will Johnson, like I said, the corner. We're not even talking about corners yet. The corner out of Michigan, Mason Graham, the defensive tackle out of Michigan. He very well could be the first defensive player off the board. It's very tough, but I'm going to place my bet on James Pearce Jr. right now.
I think the thing that will knock James Pearce off potentially being that first player off the board, because I agree with you, I think it'll probably be James Pearce Jr., is that if he can't replicate what he did last year, people are going to wonder just whether it was. Yeah, exactly. People are just going to wonder, is like, was that a 1 year wonder?
That almost happened to Clowney after the Michigan hit. Everybody was like, "Oh my god!" And then Clowney started taking plays off, and people were like, "Oh, what's happening here?" Ed Oliver too. I don't know if you remember that. Ed Oliver, that was happening too.
So yeah, that's the thing that worries me the most about James Pearce Jr. But yeah, otherwise, there's a lot of great potential options there. The one thing that could be interesting, and I sort of threw this out there as sort of like a joke, but there could be some legitimacy behind it too, is just Travis Hunter with Colorado, where it's like,
see, okay, that's a cheat code though, because is he getting drafted as a receiver or as a corner?
Well, so that's the thing. So that's what I was going to bring up here, because is he going to play the receiver position? Is he going to play the defensive back position? So I was watching the San Jose State game. It was on True TV, and they have
good job paralyzing that guy, by the way.
Yeah, that was pretty crazy.
Yeah, no.
He came back. He was fine.
Oh, did he? Okay, that was good. I actually didn't see that.
He didn't paralyze it. It was actually a shoulder injury for that guy. But regardless, so they do a post-game show now for that, and it's hosted by Adam Lefkoe, Takeo Spikes, Victor Cruz, and then here's the bigger one. Champ Bailey, who at the University of Georgia was just like Travis Hunter. He was a dual threat aspect of being a cornerback as well as a wide receiver. And so they asked him that question. He was like, if you were talking to Travis Hunter and he came to you, he's like, what's the decision that I should make? He was like, honestly, he's playing both positions really well. He gave a political answer. He's like, I need to see more tape of him playing the defensive back position. But he said, for me, I made the decision to go to defensive back because that's where I could control my own destiny. He's like, when you're playing at the receiver position, he's playing with a great quarterback as Shadeur Sanders at Colorado, but it's like, once he gets to the next level, there's no guarantee that he's going to play with Shadeur Sanders. There's no guarantee he's going to play with a Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen or something like that. Maybe he'll end up with a Sam Howell. Maybe he'll end up with a Geno Smith. I mean, Geno Smith sort of resurrected his cure, but it's like still, it's like you're not sure who you're going to get drafted as. Whereas if you play a defensive back position, you're only controlling, I need to shut down this other guy. It doesn't matter who else. Like, I mean, there's some responsibilities and things like that, but it's overall, it's all on me. And so that's why he made the change to be a defensive back as opposed to committing as a wide receiver. So he said for him, that was the decision why he made that decision in the NFL to play defensive back. So, I mean, with Travis Hunter, maybe teams will eye that and sort of see that's like, oh, well, we could use him as both. We could use him like Dion did, or, early Devin Hester. He played both sides as well. So, I mean, it's like maybe somebody will draft him that high, like, as using him as a weapon on both sides, as a returner as well, especially with the new special team rule. So it's like, I don't know what they'd label him then, like whether they'd label him as a defensive back or label as a wide receiver, regardless of how a NFL team would use him. But just like, he is a very interesting wild card in this factor.
Okay, so we had draft wild card. So that I mean, after these past 2 years, you know what that means, right?
What does that mean?
Travis Hunter to the Falcons confirmed.
Probably. I can see that happening. For sure. But
oh man, that would be one of Deion's former teams too. Oh yeah,
it's totally
gonna happen. That is absolutely gonna happen. God damn it.
Yeah. So, like I said, he's the one that sort of intrigues me the most. But if we're going like purely a defensive player, I'd probably say James Pearce out of Tennessee. I agree with that one.
Yeah, James Pearce, and like I said, like Michael Williams, don't sleep on him because that's like if James Pearce is the victim of hype and he starts slipping, Michael Williams is going to produce. I think he had 2 sacks against Clemson yesterday. So I think Michael Williams is the next likely guy. But again, like Mason Graham, Will Johnson. Just off the top, this is a loaded defensive class. It's going to be tough. It's going to be tough to determine, who is going to be the first defensive player. But hopefully it will be more clear, especially after the Senior Bowl. I think some guys are going to set themselves apart.
All right, Tad. So we started talking about some bigger programs on the college football landscape. But who do you think will be the first non-P4, because it's not P5 anymore.
Thank you. I was gonna make a joke about that. I said P5 because I was too lazy.
P5 anymore.
I was too lazy to look it up. I was like, I don't know what it is anymore. Technically, the Pac-12 is still around, but it's only 2 teams. Like, it
may become P1 eventually after a couple seasons. But
yeah,
as of right now, it is P4. So who do you think will be the first non-P4? I should clarify this.
God damn it, college football.
Yeah, based on your notes here, I thought you meant who's going to be the first non-P4 player drafted. But your question specifically, so you can answer both questions. Yeah. So who do you think will be the first non-P4 player drafted? And then do you think a non-P4 player will be drafted in the first round?
I don't. Well, so I did pick this guy to be drafted in the first round because I think if anyone does get there, it will be him. But I don't think a non-P4 player will be drafted in the first round. I think that this is just such a stacked draft class, and this is why I'm so excited for next spring. Is last year's draft class I often said was one of the best I've ever seen. This year's is not far off. It's not as good as last year, but this is still a very, very talented draft class, especially like you brought up earlier. I think 3 years now removed from the draft for Travon Walker goes first overall. I was like, God, this draft class sucks. It's like Aiden Hutchinson is like easily the best player, and other than that, it was terrible. I did not enjoy that draft class whatsoever. We now have back-to-back really good draft classes. That's the only reason I don't see one going in the first round. But if one were to, I think this is the ideal late first round, good team. We need a running back type of guy. And I swear to God, listeners and viewers, I had this pick before the college football weekend kicked off. I swear, American attest to this. We have,
sure.
We have the records. We can prove it. Ashton Jeanty, am I saying that right?
Yeah, Ashton Jeanty.
Ashton Jeanty, the Boise State running back. I know what everyone's saying is like, yeah, dude, he just ran for 300 yards. No shit. I did this before he ran for 300 yards. But that just goes to show how good he is on, I would say, a not good team, because Boise State has the, I'm blanking on the quarterback's name. He's a USC transfer. Malachi something? I believe it's Malachi.
Malachi Nelson?
Malachi Nelson. That's exactly it. So he's at Boise State. So Boise State's a solid team, but he is carrying that offense. Jeanty is. And yeah, he had 267 yards rushing. And you look at his tape from last year, and I'm, again, not saying he's going to be this good. I'm just comparing kind of his usage. He reminds me a lot of Christian McCaffrey in college, where it's like, okay, you watch some running plays and you're like, okay, there's some promise there. And then you watch him as a receiver, you're like, oh, okay, that's where it is. And so his versatility there is, I think, where a lot of his value lands. So you look at someone like, let's say, the Ravens, who are going to more than likely be sitting there in the late first round. Derrick Henry's getting up there. They haven't had a good, solid, dependable running back you can depend on, I guess, for our lean on. There we go. Lean on for the next 5 years since Jamal Lewis, Ray Rice, maybe.
We talked about it in our last episode. Ray Rice was probably the most recent one.
So like if
it was the late 2000s.
And even you look at the Chiefs, if Isaiah Pacheco has a great year, he's going to be demanding more money than the Chiefs will probably want. So like Chiefs, Ravens, who else is going to be back there? Possibly the Rams if Kyrie Williams doesn't work out. There are a lot of teams in the late first round who need running backs. I could see Genty kind of sneaking up in there.
Yeah, that's fair. I think Genty is a very safe pick. I think he's a lot of people's. He was on the short list for the Heisman, especially coming into this season, the Doak Walker Award as well. So I mean, yeah, this guy is definitely on the map, and he's going to be a very prized, sought after prospect once we come to the NFL draft. And yeah, believe me, he plays in the Mountain West. I watch him all the time as a San Jose State fan, and so yeah, this guy absolutely ran over us last year. I'm not excited to see what he's going to do against us this year as well. But yeah, he ran for 267 yards and 6 rushing touchdowns. You missed that part too.
I didn't see that part.
I say what you want. It was against Georgia Southern, but still,
Jesus.
that's impressive numbers there. Dual threat ability for sure. So yeah, I could see him being drafted first, but I could see this other player, especially with the sort of, more of a priority going towards wide receivers and a passing offense. But this guy out of Colorado State, Torrey Horton, the wide receiver out of Colorado State.
He was my pick last year.
Yeah, so I mean, I could see this here in a pass-first league. Like I said, offense is probably prioritizing the receiver more than a running back. So we may not see a running back drafted in the first round, but we'll see a slew of them going like the second and the third round. But we may see a 5th wide receiver go in the first round. I could see Horton sort of entering that conversation of being a top 5 receiver there. So I mean, like, Tad, I don't know if you knew about this, but apparently he had an offer from Kansas State, reported, of a 6-figure deal in the NIL to transfer, and he denied it. He wanted to stay loyal to his coach who took a chance on him. He's like, I want to finish my career here at Colorado State, and I really want to, just establish that loyalty. So it's like, speak to that what you want. But yeah, he turned down a 6-figure deal with Kansas State, reportedly, to stay with Colorado State there. But yeah, he's on the preseason list for the Biletnikoff Award. And like I said, top 5 in the nation in receptions last year and top 20 in receiving yards last year. So I mean, this guy has the skills. I think depending if he can put together a solid season this year, he's kind of on the fringe right now as far as being a top 5 receiver. But if he has a solid season, he's 100% in that conversation for sure.
100%. Like I said, I brought him up last August, and I thought he was really good. And it was funny because I distinctly remember this is as we were prepping for our Senior Bowl preview episode, I picked Torrey Horton as like my player to watch out for. And as I was doing my research about, a week and a half, 2 weeks before the game, I realized Torrey Horton actually, or sorry, not for the Senior Bowl, for the East-West Shrine Bowl. That's what it was. He had turned down that invitation because he decided to go back to school. Colorado State. Right. And I remember texting you about that. And I almost verbatim, this was my text response was, well, at least we get to watch him in the Senior Bowl next year. And I think that especially everything you said, I think, he'll start getting that. But speaking of the Senior Bowl bump, he's going to get a massive Senior Bowl bump. I think that this is going to be one of the guys to watch out for. If he runs a sub 4.4, 40 at the combine, he is definitely in the running because he's really good. And while you were talking, I looked at my notes from last year and, nothing pretty generic stuff. But one thing I did want to bring up is my last note on him. He reminds me a lot of George Pickens.
Ah, okay. Okay, that's pretty high praise. He's been killing it with the Steelers, especially with all the issues that they have at quarterback. We'll see how well.
Oh, we're about to get into that. Year.
Yeah, that's going to be very interesting for sure. All right, Ted, let's actually discuss some NFL teams when it comes to the NFL draft here. So which team do you think, based on, we're sort of giving a quick preview as far as our season preview, but just like, who do you think will be a surprise team in the top 10 in the 2025 draft?
Well, speaking of their terrible quarterback situation, let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers because I think they've coasted. Mike Tomlin better be thanking his lucky stars that the season's been extended to 17 games.
Exactly.
Because otherwise his 500 streak would be done. He barely eked by last year, and I think this is finally the year it's over. Russell Wilson's, he's washed. I'm not a believer in him anymore. I like Justin Fields still, but Justin Fields is not good enough to get done on his own. And unfortunately, I think that's what the quarterback of the Steelers, as they're currently set up, needs to do. Najee Harris sucks. I'm so sick of him. Hopefully he'll be out of our lives soon. Jaylen Warren, while a great complimentary piece, not a number one back. So it's just overall, I think the Steelers, everybody else in that AFC North division got better. They did not get worse. I'll give that to the Steelers. You didn't get worse, but I just think, while everybody else is moving up, you're kind of staying the same. I think the Steelers could wind up in the top 10.
So I'm going to stick with the same division, but I'm actually going to say the Cleveland Browns. So
Okay.
you look at the Cleveland Browns, they had an amazing defense last year. That's how they got to the playoffs, but they absolutely got obliterated by the Houston Texans in that first round playoff match. And so I could actually see that sort of, situation happening more often this season where it's like, people are going to be prepared for that defense. And I think just the biggest factor is just Deshaun Watson is not the guy that we saw in Houston. And I think that's going to translate this entire season as well. They're unfortunately locked him till 2027. That's the first time that he is going to be off their books. He is a free agent at that time. So they're handcuffed to him. But being in the top 10, maybe they'll be able to add more to their defense, maybe add another receiving weapon with Jerry Jeudy being actually, no, he signed an extension, so he's still with the team there. But with maybe Amari Cooper moving on or something like that, maybe they'll add to the receiver position, like I said there. But just overall, first time that they're getting a first-round pick after that Deshaun Watson trade. So this is the first year that they'll have one. To have it in the top 10, I think that could be a difference maker potentially. But I think they're just going to be hindered too much by Deshaun Watson. And their defense, while it'll still be good, I think there's going to be too many instances where I brought this up before, where it's just they're going to get fatigued and they're going to allow a lot of scoring opportunities for the opposing offense. And that's going to afford them to obviously take some losses when they probably shouldn't have. So for me, I think Cleveland's going to be a surprise team for sure.
Brick just killed a guy. You just ended Kevin Stefanski's career right there.
Yeah, definitely. I think he's going to be fired, and they're going to bring in somebody else there. So, all right. So we're talking about, teams that will be picky in the top 10, but who do you think will be a team that will trade up potentially to the top 10, or not necessarily the top 10, but just a team that'll trade up from where they are? Either if they don't have a first round pick, they'll trade into the first round. They're at the bottom of the first round, they'll trade up to the first round. Or if they're in the middle, maybe they want to trade up to possibly get guys that we talked about, James Pearce, Carson Beck, Shadeur Sanders, you name it, whoever they want. So who do you think will be a candidate to trade up?
I mean, I've already mentioned two of them. I think the Giants are going to be major players. I don't think that would come as a shock to anyone. The Steelers as well. I think the Steelers are going to be big time. I think the Steelers are going to be they're going to be like the Vikings were last year, where it's like they need to make a move, but what move are they going to make? I think that's going to be the role the Steelers have in the offseason. But you look at competitors too that want to make some moves. You look at the Rams. For example, we don't know how much longer Matt Stafford's going to be around. I think the Rams could be, real potential movers. I swear to God, I'm not being a homer when I do this. It's solely because, again, with the Giants Hard Knocks, the Colts moving up. They were trying to move up for someone. I think it was Brock Bowers. Maybe it was Malik Neighbors.
That's the rumor that I heard. I think it was Brock Bowers.
Yeah, I personally, because a lot of people on Twitter were saying, oh, they must have wanted Neighbors. I don't think they were going for Neighbors or Dunze. I think it was Bowers. But yeah, the Colts called up the Giants and were trying very hard to move up to, what was it, number 6, number 5?
Yeah, 6 overall.
6. So it wouldn't shock me the Colts, especially if Anthony Richardson works out. It's like, okay, we're clearly one step away. And Chris Ballard, I don't know if you saw his quote this week of if it gets me fired, so be it. He may say that, but I don't think he wants to get fired. So I think Ballard's ready to make the splash move that us Colts fans have been dying for him to make, because he's the most boring GM in the league. He does not do anything. And I think he knows that. He knows, okay, I need to do something to get this fan base excited. So it wouldn't shock me if the Colts were movers. The Patriots, Commanders, not so much the Bears. The Bears are pretty set up, but the Patriots and Commanders, if Jaden Daniels and or Drake May look like the real deal, it's only a piece or two away from being competitors once again for both those teams. So all those teams I could see being some real aggressive movers, come April.
Not bad. Not bad. I could definitely see that happening. I'm going to give you 3 teams. So the first one is the Dallas Cowboys. I could see them moving up a lot. And here's a bit of a bold prediction. I think they let Micah Parsons walk and they trade up to get a defensive edge rusher like a James Pearce or one of the other many defensive linemen that they have there. So they'll pay Dak Prescott finally, but because of that, they'll be cash strapped. And so it's they'll give us the draft capital and then they'll anchor the defense that way by getting a guy through the draft who's a lot cheaper, obviously, than a Micah Parsons. So I think that might happen there.
I know for the offseason. Yeah, I know the 6th of win at your sales, the bold prediction, but I 100% agree with that. I've been telling people that for the past couple months is look, you cannot pay CD, Dak, and Micah. You just can't. There's no way to make that work with salary cap and
with the contracts that they want. That's
exactly. Yeah. And when that was my initial reaction was the second CD got signed. It wasn't oh shit, that's a big. I knew CD was going to get signed, but it was okay, there goes Micah. because they're not going to let Dak walk because he's the quarterback.
Yeah.
And Micah's going to walk. So actually, that makes a whole lot of sense right there.
Yeah. And then the other two teams are actually both New York teams. So I can see the Jets, they'll probably
the Jets. That's a good
if
one.
Aaron Rodgers does as well as he does, it's like, just can keep this team together through the entire season, they'll finish, like I said, possibly around 9 to 11 wins around there. And so they'll be picking at the bottom of the first round, but they need to have a contingency plan once Rodgers retires. And they don't really have that right now. I think we discussed it. Tyrod Taylor's the backup right now. They need somebody else. So I could see them possibly trading up to get one of the quarterbacks that they want from this year's draft class, maybe a Carson Beck, whoever it is. And so I can see that happening. And then, like we talked about before, the Giants, I think just you need somebody besides Daniel Jones. So I can see them possibly moving up to solve that issue as well. So those are my 3 picks as far as the trade up there. So Tad, let's close it out with the final question in this year's sort of draft preview here. Which college do you think will end the 2025 NFL draft with the most selections from their school?
Georgia.
Georgia,
easy answer. Like Georgia's the new Alabama, especially with Kirby Smart at coach. Saban disciple is the new Saban. Like I think the timing works out as well. As soon as Georgia starts reaching like the peak of their ascension, Saban retires. So I think Kirby Smart is going to take over as like that guy in college football. Or it's like, you can't beat him. You can't beat him. He's the top tier. So I think Georgia could have as many as 5 first-round picks. That's definitely on the high end. I'm not saying they're going to, but they're going to have 5 guys in the running to do it. So yeah, I think it's going to be Georgia with like, I don't know, 7 or 8 players probably.
Okay, that's fair. For me, I'm actually going with Ohio State because look at a lot of potential draft picks.
No Michigan for either of us because Michigan's going to have quite a few.
Well, the reasoning behind why I have Ohio State for this year's draft is because we were doing our draft preview from last year, and there's a lot of guys from Ohio State that I was like, are they going to declare? Are they going to return? There's a lot of guys that after Michigan won the national title, that's like, you know what? Let's come back now because Jim Harbaugh left. It's like we want to make sure that Michigan is not the lasting sort of, taste in people's mouth. That's like they won the national title. So it's like we have a lot of guys that possibly could have opted for the draft and been high draft picks, like a Jack Sawyer, JT Tuimoloau. I think I'm saying that name right. So it's like we have a lot of guys. Denzel Burke, the defensive back.
Emeka Egbuka was the big
Emeka Egbuka was another one.
That was shocking for me.
There's a lot of names that's like they decided to return because it's like, you know what? Let's go all in. Let's win a national title because they haven't won a national title. They've only been to 1 national title championship game. So it's like, I think they want to see if they can capture that here, returning everybody, see if we could get the band back together for one last run. And so I have a lot of guys on there. So we talked about Burke, we talked about Egbuka, we talked about Tuimoloau, we talked about Jack Sawyer, Quinshon Judkins I talked about earlier, Travion Henderson, Tyleik Williams on their defensive line, Donovan Jackson, their offensive linemen. They also got guys like Davison Igbonason, their defensive back there, Sonny Styles, their safety, and Josh Simmons also on their offensive line there. So it's like they have a lot of guys potentially in that first 3 rounds, possibly could see 10 to 11 players in those 3 rounds alone.
And speaking of wild card quarterbacks, Will Howard, the senior Kansas State transfer. I was big on him. I said, like, back when he was at Kansas State, I watched him play I watched him in person play.
And he briefly transferred to USC before he left.
Yes,
so it's like, I remember we talked about that.
And then he was also flirting with Miami. NIL's wild, man.
Yeah.
But, Will Howard is one of those guys that it would not shock me if he was getting 3rd, 2nd, or maybe even late first round, hype going into the draft season.
So I agree with you that I think Georgia is that team now as opposed to Alabama. Like they'll have that longevity, but if we're talking about this year alone, I think Ohio State probably will have the most.
That's a very fair counter.
We'll see how it plays out. So, Tad, I know you're excited. College football has already kicked off.
1-0, go Frogs.
Hey, San Jose State's 1-0, so I'm feeling happy too. But yeah, we still have a handful of months left to go before we actually get to NFL draft coverage. Not even the NFL draft itself.
Yeah, that's true.
A lot of time for the NFL draft is upon us. But I mean, guys, make sure you interact with us on our social media handles when it comes to fantasy football, because that is the time right now. We want to help you win your respective fantasy football leagues. I mean, Tad, as of recording, we're going to have a draft in about an hour. So it's like, yeah, we're excited to sort of get into that action there with our good friends at LAFB Network there. So, I mean, guys, interact with us all season long. You got us on Twitter. You got me at @UpTheSide23. You got Tad and TadSide94. Got the show handle at @TheSide Guys. And, of course, on Instagram at @TheSide Guys as well. That's where we post all of our picks when it comes to, start set advice and waiver advice and trade advice. That's where you can sort of DM us or even just message us, comment on our posts there. We'll probably have some polls throughout the season. But, yeah, definitely once fantasy season is over, ask us all your draft questions too, because then we'll transition right into all of our draft coverage. So lots of great coverage there as well. So guys, interact with us all season long. We want to help you win your respective fantasy titles. Subscribe or listen to your podcast. Make sure you subscribe to our YouTube channel as well. And please, guys, we just brought them up about fantasy draft here, but support our parent network at LAFB Network. They're giving you a lot of great content. We already got the college football season kicking off, so they're giving you a lot of great coverage when it comes to the Bruins and the Trojans. And with next week, we got the NFL season cooking out. So we got the Rams and the Chargers on that side as well. So all 4 LA football teams, they got you covered with lots of great content from lots of great content producers. So to everybody who's already listening to the podcast, watching the videos, interacting with us on social media, asking us questions, I mean, just anything and everything that you're doing to support the podcast, we can't thank you enough.
And like Amir said, like, we're here for you, up to date, fantasy news, injuries, whatever. We're willing to hit you with, reactionary takes on like what to do from here, but also with what we talked about today with the NFL draft, with college football. We're also going to react as the week goes on. Like we talked about the UNC quarterback, Mac Johnson, borderline NFL prospect. At least I was kind of keeping my eye on. How does this affect his draft status? If you want to answer that question, hit us up on Instagram, on Twitter for those things. We are watching, it only took for a podcast to do it, but Amir is finally watching college football. So we are watching college football on top of all the pro stuff, and we want, to give you all the best information possible. So keep hitting us up there. And, as always, everyone, enjoy the season. It's the start of the season, both with college and the pros. I'm excited. I'm sure you're excited. So we're going to enjoy it together. Keep hitting us up for advice. And you know what? Everyone except for Amir and Al and Chauncey, we're going to win that trophy. Okay. We're going to get that trophy together. So as always, everyone, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for watching, and please stay safe.